Hello, I'm Dr. Monica Moody Moore, and welcome to today's episode of Pivot on Purpose. Harvard Business Review just released an article labeled Smart Ways to Disagree. And it made me think of all the disagreements that are no doubt evident all around you. I know they're evident around me, whether it's in the workplace, sometimes on the home front, sometimes in social organizations, and sometimes just trying to go through life and get things done. There are points and times in which we see things differently. So, what are we to do? Pack our bags and go home? Of course not. There are ways to disagree thoughtfully and with a better intention, producing trust and a better outcome if we set our minds to it. So today's video really puts disagreement at the center of the equation, and not in a way that's off-putting, but in a way that gives us agency and the potential to really overcome ourselves so that we can lean into one another and see each other's perspectives more fully, even when we disagree. So I'll put the description for the article from Harvard Business Review in my description so that you can read it for yourself. But I want to give you 5 tangible things that you can do today. You need not wait, and you don't have to have specialty information or learning to do it. Just simply go into yourself and think about ways that you can do this work more intentionally. And with these 5 principles, it might get you started. And along the way, I used to work at Franklin Covey, and one of the 7 habits says that we should seek to understand rather than to be understood. That actually is one of the premises of this article about clarifying understanding. So, your first things first, which is another 7 habits principle, but one of your first things first, in terms of understanding how best to relate and get through difference, is to ensure you understand the difference. Restate the difference if, in fact, you're in a staff meeting or having a discussion or even a lively debate. And it can look something like, Sarah, did I understand you correctly when you said da 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 da? So again, you're seeking to understand to ensure that you haven't gotten it wrong from the get-go. So at the onset, ensure proper understanding of where the difference may actually fall. For all you know, Sarah may come back and say, no, that wasn't what I said at all, or that was not my intent. I'm glad you said something. Now I can clarify. So again, very often disagreements happen simply because we don't understand each other's perspectives at all, let alone have a different opinion about them. So seek to understand the difference for sure. You also want to lead with making sure that you have stated learning as a clear goal. Uh, Learning says that, help me understand this. I want to learn. The more you say out loud that your intention is to understand and to learn, people will often lean back into. Now, of course, some may fold their arms and say, it's not my job to help you learn or to understand. And in case that happens, you have to prepare yourself. But in most instances, particularly in professional settings, people will really respect the fact that you're seeking to learn and authentically want to understand, if that's truly your intention. So I ask you to check yourself first, make sure that's really your intention, and see where, in fact, you can strive to learn more than you did prior to the conversation beginning. So do that for yourself to understand. And some people have seen this, particularly in office settings and on Zoom, I hear it often. Yes, and, or instead of leading with a but, you lead with an and. This allows for an expansion of thought. You accept the perspective of someone else, yes, and, etc. I've even been involved in situations where we had to practice this type of behavior so that we could more seamlessly do it in a way that was actually very authentic for the situation and the time. So try it for yourself at home or in casual conversations. Oftentimes, when we begin the conversation with a no or a but, that puts up a defensive posture and it makes agreement a little harder to come by. So if you insert an and, then it expands the possibility. Sometimes it's not a matter of right and wrong or only one universal truth. Sometimes others believe that there is one universal truth, but often that is not the case. But let's say you're in a situation where you don't necessarily partake in that particular perspective, but instead of a no, it's well, and dot, dot, dot. It allows that other perspective to live on, but you're adding what you most believe instead of negating. Which brings me to my other point. Try to validate if you can. If there's anything in which you do believe that you can validate, well, that's a legitimate perspective, Sarah. And I'll add such and such. You see how I try to, in this brief video, model what a validation might look like, and then add an additional perspective. Now, sometimes your disagreements are so vast, there is no common ground. And if that happens to be the case, then you need not validate something that you truly don't believe. You could simply begin with your belief and acknowledge that you've heard the other person, not that you agree. Sarah, I've heard your thoughtful perspective and hear where you're coming from. From my view, I believe such and such and such. So again, you've not negated her view. You've simply acknowledged that you've heard and then go further to add to it what it is that you believe thereafter. Finally, and this is where I put my own pregnant pause into the conversation to get you in the spirit of this work, to slow down, to speed up. You actually want to insert some pregnant pauses, so to speak. And a pregnant pause is just that. It's a way to collect your thoughts, get a breath, make something not as direct a bullet, but more of a slow delivery. An intentional thought, it allows you to also ensure that you don't put your own foot in your mouth if you're not intending to say something, that you can speak a little more slowly and thoughtfully. And you can allow the air to breathe as you breathe and deliver your perspective. So here's my point at the end of the day. Disagreements will happen. In fact, I just had a slight disagreement with a person that saw something very differently than I did yet today. I did exactly as I'm telling you, and that was before reading this article. Please make sure you read the article. But what I did was this: instead of respond in text, I actually phoned the person so we could actually have a discussion. I use some of these same principles that I'm sharing with you to try to understand the perspective, to try to offer some degree of validation to the points that I could co-sign on, to actually show that I want to learn and understand differently to the degree that I'm able, putting in all my vulnerabilities to the degree that I'm able. I emphasized sometimes you just don't have the capacity for a certain degree of understanding, depending on where you are in your own development. To make sure that I used an and instead of a but to expand the possibility of thought, and to slow down in order to let the thought breathe, and to ensure that I wasn't letting emotion get carried away with me, but that I was using my better logic. So tell me what you will do the next time you have a disagreement in the workplace or in a community group or in some situation that you care about. Or if you already have a lived experience, tell me what you did differently, or maybe modeled some of what I've just shared. These types of perspectives also help other people learn and grow. Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Pivot on Purpose. Share broadly, give me your comments, and more importantly, let's keep learning and growing together.